From the flicker of the first film reel to the magic of the silver screen, cinema has always been a mirror of our dreams and our realities. Decade by decade, innovation has transformed how we tell stories, shaping emotions and creating worlds beyond our imagination. Now we stand on the brink of the next revolution, AI in Hollywood. Algorithms that spark creativity, machines that bring visions to life, artificial intelligence changing the rules of the game. Join us on this journey as we explore the AI revolution in Hollywood. Discover the future of storytelling, right here, right now. Are you ready for the revolution?
Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, a variety roundtable, a state of the industry. I would love to have Cynthia Littleton. Let's have a big hand for Cynthia. You are going to sit right here, Cynthia. And then the fabulous Paul Debevec, who just won an Emmy and all sorts of other crazy awards. He's always winning something. It's annoying. Paul Debevec, please sit in the middle here. Hello. And without further ado, Victor, why don't you take a seat, Victor, all the way there, and let's have a big hand for our panel.
We have with us not only someone who's a technical expert, but really the preeminent industry expert. It's only appropriate, I think, that we get answers from the two of them. Just help us level set the discussion. What exactly is AI? And what's the state of AI? I mean, did something happen? Because we're all talking about it. So why is that?
So AI is a lot of things, as we all know, and it's been around for quite a while. In fact, neural networks have been around for a while. They were originally kind of invented and discussed in academia in the 1980s. And when I was in graduate school, I think it was like 1992, we had to do a class project for artificial intelligence. And all of this neural network stuff had actually gone out of fashion by then. And it was back to these like symbolic manipulations of like words and verbs and action things with Lisp, which is a really kind of interesting computer language to use. But I thought the neural network stuff was cool. So I actually had to do a class project of trying to figure out, I thought, we'll have it figure out where facial features are in images. So I got a database of images. I couldn't go to the internet quite yet, but I scanned all the images in my high school yearbook, and then I manually labeled them, and I clicked like the left eye, the right eye, the nose, and the mouth. And then I trained a network that's like literally like the millionth of the size of today's neural networks, probably even a billionth actually, with like 7 nodes in the hidden layer in the middle. And it was actually able to take an image that I sent in that it never seen before and say, here's where the face are, here's where the facial features are. And I thought, this is amazing. I showed it to my professors, and they said, okay, well, that's cute, but this stuff's never really going to amount to much. and I didn't really work on it for quite a long time, but then I was lucky that I happened to be working at Google kind of for the late 2010s. And the stuff sprang to life, and the ability to train with tons of data that now we can find on the internet and just have radically more computation power, particularly the kind of operations you can do inside of GPUs, people revisited it, and all of a sudden we should have been working on it for the last 30 years because it's really valuable ways to create incredibly powerful algorithms. And I think the latest thing is that generative AI with like generative adversarial networks and diffusion models and transformers, all of that stuff, where it can not only analyze images, but actually spit them back out, create them, imagine them. This was unexpected, and this is where it gets really interesting.
Well, Cynthia, you're how about Hollywood? You've got AI. What does AI mean or look like to Hollywood, and what is it doing in Hollywood?
Well, I will tell you, I have much better answers now than I would have 2 weeks ago, because AI is very much, as you know, there are writers on strike. You can go that way about half a mile and find quite a few people out there picketing Netflix. And having talked to writers on the picket line about what is driving them, what is driving their concerns, it's very clear, and I would be the first to raise my hand, that very few of us can actually explain what it is, what's going on, but what is absolutely what everybody, why the prism for this conference is so important, because everybody is scared of it. Everybody sees it as a foe. It's coming to take my job. It's coming to cheapen the creative process. It's going to allow those greedy studios, and in contract time, that is the calculation. It gets very, it's very, very zero sum, and it's feeling like, oh, this is a tool that you're going to use to take my job, cut my pay. It's just, it could not be seen as more of a menace. And so I think that these kind of conversations are important. Everybody has a slightly different definition of AI. Let me ask a question of you two. Why did it seem like 3 months ago, just like poof, a puff of smoke, and AI was in every conversation? Was it truly Chat GPS and its kind of rise, or has there been what's been the bubbling up? Why are we all talking about it?
Well, as I mentioned, like just the ability for it to generate an image. So the image generators, I think, were getting a lot of press, at least on my news feeds, before ChatGPT 3, now ChatGPT 4, was showing that it could write things. I'm a a computer graphics person, so I'm excited when we create an image. And that stuff, the first research paper that you could type in a text prompt and see like a really low resolution 16 pixel by 16 pixel image come out that kind of conformed to what you asked for in the text prompt was like in 2016. So that was actually a while ago now, but not that long ago. And it came to the, again, when that came out, it's like, hey, that's cute, like, but is it going to really amount to anything? And it just took another researcher, take another little bite at it, do a little higher resolution, figure out ways to try to get it to look more like the thing that you asked it for. And then at some point it starts getting good, it gets more interest, and then it snowballs. And then a huge thing, and this is what I love about all of these tools, so many of them are just being made online for all of us to play with, to learn about.
The whole ethos is open source.
Yeah, which is fantastic. And once it gets in the hands of artists, in the hands of creative people, then that's where it really started taking off, because you're seeing what these tools can do in the hands of a creative person. And that's where I think it got super exciting.
Cynthia, you mentioned the writer's strike. Maybe for people in the audience who haven't followed it as closely, what exactly is the discussion about AI in the writer's strike, and how do you see those issues playing out?
Well, they're playing out right now on picket signs, which is never the best way to like adjudicate things or deal with complicated policy. But as we were just talking before, labor contracts have historically been one of the big ways that Hollywood has wrestled with new technologies, because it all comes down to the bottom line. How are you slicing up the pie? And like I said, I think if you, and this is unscientific, but if you polled about 75% of the Writers Guild of America, they would say, well, this is. So with the context of the writer's strike, which began May 2nd, and at this point, it's not going away, I think, anytime soon. But it began May 2nd, and basically the Writers Guild went into these contract negotiations knowing that AI is a big topic. The Writers Guild had put a working group on it and came up with some recommendations. Basically, what the Writers Guild wants is to come out of this negotiation with something on a piece of paper that says AI generated material, and right there, like we could define that for a half an hour, but AI generated material cannot be considered by a producer, a studio, or a streamer, cannot be considered, quote, literary material. Literary material is a very important designation. The Writers Guild contract their master contract is about 600 pages. Literary material is like one of the currencies of that. You create literary material, it has value, it's IP, it has value, it has associated rights that go with it. That's all spelled out in those 600 pages. The fear is that studios are going to use AI. One fear that was expressed to me by a writer who fully said, I don't know anything about this, but this is what I'm hearing and this is what I'm afraid of. Studio Y uses an AI program to create, we put in we want a family sitcom, we want a roly-poly dad, and we put in all the cliches you want, and it will spit out a pretty mediocre script. Then they hire, again, this is the extreme version of writers, but mediocre script, then they hire a few writers for a few days or a week or two to punch it up and make it a little more human, give it a little more, name the cat Sally, or add those texture touches. And while this sounds very draconian, when you hear somebody standing there, somebody who makes their living looking at the void of the blank screen and filling the page, you can understand where that would seem like a fear. And look, the studios, anybody that's ever tangled with the studio knows that they have power, they have accounting tricks upon accounting tricks. So this is really a fear. And there's also a feeling like, unlike other things where other aspects of, technology and contracts, it's a lot easier to put guardrails around it. AI is like, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
So you mentioned the writers. Is this something that's uniquely affecting the writers, or are other kind of parts of the industry equally concerned? I'm thinking about musicians or photographers or artists. Like, how far does this worry extend?
We have been seeing, like, there was it got a lot of attention. There was a fake Drake song that started to get a lot of attention, and it was sort of scary to the casual listener who really can't, the casual listener being probably people other than Drake, that could not necessarily tell the difference. And that was, I think, really eye-opening. There was another artist, similar example, I don't know if it was Taylor Swift or I don't think it was Taylor, but it was another similar example. These are going very fast, and the entertainment industry people have been there, where we see music being the tip of the spear because it doesn't need as much data as video content, but here we go. And there is a real fear and misinformation, whether it's a fake misinformation, the fakes, that as a journalist and somebody who cares about truth and cares about, what we can trust, it's very unsettling.
Well, let me turn the question then to you, Paul. The fear underlying all of this is that AI or robots will replace people, right? And I guess part of the question is that realistic? Do you see that as something that can actually happen? And relatedly, I've heard criticism of like machine learning, for example, of having built-in biases. Because you imagine you're feeding in kind of the system a set of data, and what you're going to get is going to be based on the data that you feed in. So there's bias in that, but also it feels like there's an inherent kind of retrospective aspect to machine learning, where it's trying to recreate things or patterns that it's already observing from the past. And I wonder what's left for room for like innovation or, risk or doing something completely different. I mean, do you think AI really can overcome all of that? Or what's your view from a technical perspective?
Well, I think that, the tools you use to do something creative, they can empower what you're trying to do in various ways. But, in the end, the top level creativity is coming from people. And we've always seen that. I can remember back in school when, this is going to date me, but like when pocket calculators became something any student could have. There was a question like, should we let a student use a pocket calculator to do the math problems, or should we keep teaching long division, right? Well, maybe do both. Long division, that's fun, right? But nowadays, everyone literally has a calculator in their pocket, so it would have been a bad idea not to teach kids how to use that back then. Word processors, to write a document in high school, we were writing them out on paper, and then all of a sudden word processors became available, and I just thought, like, is it okay, am I cheating if I use a word processor? I don't know, do you use a word processor when you write? It fundamentally changed everything about how you create the thing except the creative part. So I think we're creating new, very powerful creative tools that we're going to wrap our heads around, and we're going to find out how to leverage them, and it will change how things are done. But I wouldn't want to have to do it the old way anymore.
It does seem like there are certain uses of AI that have been around for a while and actually probably are less controversial. I'm thinking, at least I don't know if this is true, but I always heard like when I watch on Netflix, they have a program that basically says, oh, you're going to like things with this person and this car about like some thing like that. So Cynthia, do you have a sense of like actually the scope of AI and which uses have been considered sort of accepted and which ones have been more controversial?
Well, interesting. I mean, one use case that we're hearing a lot at content companies is, and content companies, they also turn on copyright. I mean, copyright is the overlay that is also, the sort of scary part of that. Like, where's the porous part, and AI, where does the copyright line begin and end? What you're hearing a lot is definitely streamers are using AI to help power the algorithm, also create the, every page, every tile has a little bit of language. Right now, humans have to do that, but they are increasingly, training those kinds of things. Now, is a writer denied income because an AI bot writes a 2-line summary of an episode of The Crown on Netflix? Probably not, but that is being presented in like we can free up these. There's so much mundane work that has to be done around one area. Marketing and promotion is an area where we're seeing a lot of people they say we're already using these tools and it frees us. It allows us to use our great big human brains for the most creative things and the kind of the mundane. And if you think about it, we're no longer washing our clothes on washerboards. We have washing machines. Our coffee makers, they're all powered by small bits of AI. I have found that in talking about this topic, if you can give people very familiar things, like all of us, our cars use a certain amount of AI, it makes it a little bit less scary.
So you mentioned generative AI being sort of like the new thing that sort of is causing all of this conversation. I mean, so as the lawyer, I'll bring in, like, there is a pending court case right now in the District of Delaware where Getty Images has sued Stability AI over basically, they have this a program that generates photographs or generates images based on what you want. And in order to create that, the machine learning ingested like 12 million of Getty Images photographs, and that's sort of what is the basis of the lawsuit. And of course, it creates questions like, is a photograph that's created by this AI machine copyrightable? Is it authored by somebody? And if it's not, does it then belong to the last human to touch it? Or does it belong to nobody, right? There's that question. And then there's the question of, can people just take big bodies of work and ingest it into a machine without getting permission for it? Or do you have to pay money for that? And then, how much can you use of the material that you just used in? So there's all questions that court is going to answer, but I'm actually curious, Cynthia, do you have a sense of whether or not the people in the industry have already staked out positions as to what they think the answers should be? Or have people aligned in different ways in terms of their views on how AI should be governed?
Well, I think it very much is kind of from where you sit. And if you're in the creative community, and you're right, we're talking about writers because that's so fundamental, but there is a world where you can have, directing can be very influenced by AI. The look, the feel, the lighting standards can be absolutely uniform. Any production crew would tell you, yeah, that's great, except for when the sun moves an inch, or there's so many elements where you can't, the unpredictability. You need that human ability to respond. But I do not. I was into the basically answer your question. There is no, I think because there is still not an understanding of what the scope of its use in a legal way would be. Like the example of Getty Images, we well know we write big checks to Getty Images every month. Like they make a good living by selling those photos. And to me, somebody who has literally grown up in a world where copyrights are very, very specific, the idea of ingesting all those photos, that to me seems like a crime. You can't just take, perhaps it's because I know a lot of the photographers, but I know that the blood and sweat that goes into crafting those images, you just can't take them, but you can't tell that to a bot that has been programmed to find the best, clearest, the widest archive. So I guess it comes back to the question: who's training these bots?
Do you think, because Hollywood, I think you've mentioned before, is a copyright-centric industry, or is industry of, how do you think that cuts? Like, does it cut in terms of everyone wanting to protect things they already have created and owned, and so they want no one to use it? Or do you think it cuts the other way as a bunch of creators who want to be able to use other people's works to create new works?
Well, one thing that's been interesting, an interesting example here is TikTok. TikTok has really come up, and it has the ethos of TikTok, and I'm really not, my depth of knowledge of this is about this big, but I can, from talking to the 26-year-olds in the office and my own son, TikTok, the whole thing is to take other people's work, transform it a little bit. The TikTok user puts their spin on, an old song or a current video or something. That has taken Hollywood. Hollywood's initial response was, "We're going to sue you out of existence." And some smart people at TikTok really made a big push to say, no, actually, you've got to embrace that. It's been very hard because Hollywood was born on, exclusivity. You had to pay money. You had to go to the theater. You could only see the movie in the theater. Television was a little different, but you had to watch it Thursday at 8. You couldn't, now it was far from the on-demand world that we have now. So the idea that they want to be able to control that. They want to be able to control the access and the how you use it. And in this realm, they just can't. And that is very hard. So with TikTok, Hollywood had to say, like, no, this is good for your movie if 5,000 people take 30 seconds of the trailer and put their own spin on it. And we recently did a story about the animated movie Puss in Boots. They really embraced that. They went in and they actually kind of put chum in the water for like cat lovers and things and wanted to see the incredible creativity, and were very legitimately blown away with what people did with it. But it's taken a couple of years for people to get out of the idea of like, hey, you can't touch my content. It's a very different mindset.
So we're here probably as people who are like most likely users of AI or beneficiaries of AI. I think you're one of the few people on this stage who can say you create AI or create the tools that people, from the perspective of a techie and the perspective of someone who actually like thinks about this not from the kind of like entertainment side, so to speak, but from the science or the technology side, how do you think the answers like in your head should be? Like, what do you think should be the answers in terms of who owns it or who doesn't own it or what it should be allowed to do?
Well, all of the best stuff that I've seen coming out of these amazing tools turns out to be completely aligned with the people that I know who are the most amazing artists and the most enterprising. And I've been seeing great stuff from them for years before, and I'm seeing great stuff from them in the age of AI. And the process of prompting these things to get a good result, seeing the couple of variations that you see, picking that, maybe photoshopping a little bit on top of that, learning to use this tool and part of this tool, it's an immensely creative process. And that's what it takes to get from the stuff that anybody can get to something that's truly gonna stand out. And I think we're pretty good at recognizing, when there's a form of like premium entertainment. We love Hollywood feature films because there's just nothing that looks like them. It's the top, it's the best lighting, it's the best performances, the best writing. And you can't get there anywhere else than having the most creative people using the best possible tools. And I think that these folks who are the most creative people creating these things, the tools are going to help them reach an even higher level than we had before, and maybe even create new forms of premium entertainment that we're going to enjoy as well.
One thing I've noticed about a lot of AI panels is that people ask a lot of questions and there aren't very many answers. So even in the legal questions that I just raised, I'll throw out a controversial proposition is, I think we already know the answers in some ways. I think a lot of people act like these are new questions because it's AI, and somehow all the answers are unsettled because it's AI. But I actually think, like you talk about machine learning, we have already precedents on the books in terms of what it should be like. For example, Google already digitized basically every printed text it could find, and basically was allowed to do that, even without getting necessarily permission, with limitations on how it could use it, limitations on what it would display. Or similarly, I forgot the name of that program, but you could put in an essay to see if it's plagiarized, right? And so that also requires a lot of ingestion of material in order to do that.
Turnitin.com.
Turnitin.com. I think in those cases, what we've always learned is expression is different than ideas. You can't copyright ideas. You obviously read a lot of expression to get those ideas. And then when you figure out and put it in your own head together, you're supposed to spit out something. Just don't make it too similar to anything else that you looked at, right? I mean, that's sort of the rules we always live by. And I imagine even in the Getty Images case, it's the same basic process. It ingests, just like a human being would, it ingests a whole bunch of images that we've stored in our brain from childhood, like as a baby. And then basically from that, you discern certain ideas or patterns, you sort of make some of it your own, and you spit out a photograph or something that hopefully doesn't look too much like anything else.
Well, hopefully you don't put the Getty's image logo.
Well, that's the thing is I think was the stupidity in that case is I imagine AI is going to get better where the final step is going to be, and now look at your output and make sure it's sufficiently different than everything else. I mean, are we not there yet? Or you were going to say something?
I think as we're talking, thoughts are coming to me as we're talking, but where is the line between who monetizes the AI. Like, you know, if I'm just typing into Google, because I noticed like about a year and a half ago or so, like any query that I can, and it took me a while, like any query I type into Google, here comes an article, and I would think, gee, wow, God, there's just articles about everything. And then it kind of dawned on me like, oh, geez, this is what that is. So it feels like we're going to get to a point where, you know, where brands, because AI, I know AI is sort of like, is a little bit like saying, you know, gasoline, and then there's Shell, and there's 76, and there's, you know, you have your maybe fossil fuel is not the best example here, but like AI is a noun, and there's going to be brands within that matter. And it seems to me like one of the things that is going to really help is somebody's going to market themselves as, we are the legal, ethical AI that is going to help you do things in a legal and ethical way, and especially to reach Hollywood. Because I think one of the things that's happened is it just, call it since January, I just making this up, but for me, just my hunch is that it seems like right around the top of the year, it's just all people were talking about. And like everything, you know, the marketing campaign for AI could have used some refinement, because it has come out as just this thing, as opposed to, oh, here are some cool tools, and here's a company that makes a tool. Like, you know, some people like their Android phone. I'm a ride or die iPhone. So you can kind of have your flavors, but I think the more casual person in Hollywood just thinks of it as this, like, it's like bees coming. It's a menace, and that is marketing is going to be important.
It does seem the challenge when you're talking about having a legal, ethical kind of AI. We can answer all the questions we want in the United States, but our industry is not just Hollywood, right? You have other countries that have other approaches, and my understanding is that in those other countries, some of them are taking a much more permissive stance in terms of the technology, efforts, I guess, to attract the people working on that technology. Isn't it inevitable with AI that there's a race to the bottom? Because you could always just do all your machine learning ingestion part in the country that allows you to do it, and then take the benefits of the smart machine everywhere else that doesn't allow you to do the learning part, right? Is that something that people working in this area are doing on purpose to take advantage of the different rules? Or is that something that makes it completely lawless and that you can never regulate it? I'll start with you.
Well, I mean, I like building systems that have lots of lights and lots of cameras, and we invite people over and we take lots of pictures and stuff. So I like the idea of like capture your own data to train your algorithms, and then you own all of the data, and then you can actually capture exactly what you need to get exactly the kind of tool that you're trying to build. And that's one way to go, where it seems like, you know, everything's pretty in the clear, and that's certainly one of the things I think about as how to move forward.
And so do you think the U.S. is going to be the leader, or the irrelevant person at the end of the day, or just the battleground in terms of where this is fought?
Well, I know that in many countries we are seen as having really, really stiff and strong copyright laws, and so I think that is, you know, until very recently, entertainment, you know, in the UK, you just didn't have the profit potential that you had here. So of course, the potential for spoils is going to help adjudicate a lot of this. But that's part of the sort of, this whole world is, it's so porous. You can't control it. And even in the Getty images, you know, even if that legitimate copyrighted photo was ingested once, how do you know that it wasn't ingested 3 more times? And so it's been different, and it's grainy. The potential, the domino effect is so profound.
Okay.
It's got people very worried.
This has been a great discussion. To close it out, I'll let you each have 1 sentence or 2 sentences. We've talked with a lot of about AI with a lot of fear. How can Hollywood make AI a friend? And we'll start with Paul, and then we'll close with you, Cynthia.
Well, I think, as I said before, just get out there, learn the tools, and learn to do something amazing with it. Everyone I know who's like a truly creative, amazing person I've known before is using the tools, and they're doing stuff that they are excited about. They're having fun with. They're sending around to their friends. And, you know, we're starting to see the first AI-generated short films. A lot of them are kind of playing into the dystopian, you know, view, and like intentionally trying to get the things with 5 fingers and, you know, strange stuff going on there. And that's fine. That's kind of like the appropriate way to express the zeitgeist at the moment. But I think just just be creative with the new stuff. Like, we lived through CGI taking over everything, and it didn't, and it's just a great tool. And now we have, Pixar movies and way better visual effects than we used to have. Let's see where we go with this.
Final word to Cynthia.
I would just say that my old saw is, the player piano did not put live music out of business. So I think I would just repeat, there is an enormous market opportunity for somebody who knows how Hollywood thinks, who know how the creative communities, knows exactly what buttons to push, to say, hey, these are the tools, and really explain it, because a lot of us are cocktail party pretending we know what we're talking about. I think I've done a good job for a half an hour here, but thank you all for listening to me, and thank you. This has really been truly instructive, but I think that it needs to be market, it needs PR and it needs marketing in terms of how this give me a great example of how this can make my life easier on the set without putting too many people out of work, and I think you'll have a line out the door.
Thank you both very much. I think all of you.